Hi, this is Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the President, Founder, and Chief Listening Officer here at our network at USA Global TV and Radio. Thank you so much for your loyalty. Thank you so much to all of our guests, to our team members, to our sponsors, and to all of our elevated listeners. Here at USA Global TV and Radio, we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. We celebrate all of our team members, all of our guests, and all of our sponsors from around the world who come and lead their lives with their hearts to help other people walk into their greatness. If you'd like to be a guest on any of our shows, please go over to our website, usaglobaltv.com, and book your session. Please contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com and subscribe to our channel.
Hi, Rhoda Laughlin here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. This 6-part series is on toxins in your health. What toxins can do to you generally doesn't happen overnight, but I'm going to tell you a story here very shortly. It's something that's almost instantaneous, but they have a tendency to build up over time. But let me go ahead and jump to the first slide so we can, okay, get that one. There we go. I'm a researcher. I fell in love with chemistry at 15 years of age in my sophomore in high school. I loved it. It answered my immediate question, why do things happen? And as such, that has led me into a number of different things. But I researched the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat a symptom, and you'll always be treating symptoms. I don't have a medical degree. I don't have a medical background. I don't have a pharmaceutical experience, but I take my knowledge and I go into what is causing this to happen. And let's look at it from one molecule to the next, to the next, to the next. And sometimes you can find out that, well, if you do this, everything stops. If you do this, everything speeds up. And so there we do have a lot of controls on things in our lives. And that's what I love to do. That's what I write about. That's what I speak about all the time. The toxins, as we're talking about here in this 6-part series, the official definition is toxins, a naturally occurring organic poison produced by metabolic activities from living cells, et cetera, et cetera. But I look at it, whatever's toxic to our body. And sometimes, we know that lead is toxic. If we get mercury, we know a lot of things are not naturally organic poisons. So there's a lot of things out of the medical definition of toxins. But probably the best reference site you can go to, bar none, is ewg.org. That's Environmental Working Group. We talked about that last week. If you want to know information about it, we pulled a lot of information out of ewg.org to show you individual products. If you have a cosmetic, if you have a food, you have whatever you want to know what's in it and what each of those components can do to you, that is a place to go to. Let me tell you a little story why this show was postponed last week. We're in the process of remodeling the house a little bit. We had the upstairs bathroom redone. The downstairs is just about done. And in the process of doing that, a couple, 3 months ago, we took our big couch and 2 big chairs out and had to reupholster. Well, they sat there for a while, finally got done. We got them home. And I'm sitting there and all of a sudden my eyes are burning. Well, I have a dry eye problem that I've had now for maybe about a year. It got to be bad enough that I actually went to see an ophthalmologist. And he explained to me that my tear ducts are not producing, they're not allowing the flow of tears through. And every time I blink my eyes, I'm not getting the fluid across my eyes. So I have a little irritation, a little burning. And some days it's not even noticeable. I can go sometimes a week, 2 weeks, maybe more. I don't even pull the drops out of my pocket. And then other times I'm sitting there just drop. Well, I'm sitting there and all of a sudden my eyes are burning. I can't figure out why. Well, not a big deal. It's been 2, 3, maybe 3.5 weeks since the last time I had a major bout. And my ophthalmologist says that just like you have sunburned and the skin peels off and flakes away, you have the same thing on your eyes. Periodically, your eyes shed some layer. And when it does, you're a little bit more sensitive. Okay, it made a lot of sense. But all of a sudden I'm having this problem, and instead of going away in a day, which it typically had done in the past, I said, what's going on? What's going on? I'm sitting here like 4 days, and seriously, I could not do the show last week. It was just impossible. I got through the show before this, but my eyes were just burning. Regardless, I had to figure out what it was, and I'm thinking, what has changed in my life? And one of the things that had changed was our new furniture. And I can sit there in the chair and I can smell the chemicals outgassing coming out of the fabric. My wife cannot. And I started thinking to myself, well, what if I cover this up? As I took a sheet and I covered up the chair, and miraculously, 10 minutes, my eyes started to calm down. An hour or so later, I didn't have an eye problem. They put toxic chemicals everywhere. The fabric, to make it easier to work with, whatever it may happen to be, they put in there. That particular chemical was creating a major problem with my eyes. Didn't create a problem with anybody else. Any house guests we've had over, my wife, no one else has this problem. Everyone has a level of sensitivity. My sensitivity to that particular chemical became very, very obvious. So we're doing an experiment. My wife took the sheets off today. I'm going to go down later on after the show and sit there and see if it takes 10 or 15 minutes for my eyes to act up. If it does, then I know pretty certain that that particular chemical is toxic to me and it manifests itself in burning eyes. So now let's jump into our talk today. Popeye's chicken. We're going to go into this. Foodbabe.com is probably one of the best blogs around if you want to know what is good, what's bad, how can you make something good. And we're going to talk a little bit that next week about what other options do we have. But today, let's go ahead and talk about Popeye's chicken. Now, a couple things come to mind before I even get there. And one of them is the issue of, is a toxin just something that gives you nausea, or does it actually cause death? And we're going to be talking about the FDA, Federal Drug Administration. And when they say something is safe, how safe is it? Well, for instance, Tylenol, acetaminophen, would you believe that there's nearly 60,000 emergency department visits every year because of reactions to acetaminophen, to Tylenol, and over 2,500 hospitalizations, and in reality, over 500 deaths per year because of acetaminophen, Tylenol. But that's safe. It's out there in the marketplace. Now, yeah, some of those may have been overdoses. They say at most 50%. But regardless, 250, 300 people die a year just from taking the normal dosage of Tylenol. But it's there year after year after year. This hasn't changed. This is not something. But it's a safe product. It's on the marketplace. So when we start looking at some of these products, additives that are inside the Popeye's chicken, we're going to have a similar deal. This may not affect you, but it may. And that's what we're going to look at a little bit. Now, when I think of Popeyes, it tastes too good. But there was a Lay's potato chip commercial many years ago. So, bet you can't eat just one. And why do they know that? Because of the salt and the other things that they add to those potato chips. It is hard just to eat one. It really and truly is. But if you're able to eat one and put it down, some people have that ability. But generally, we want a little bit more, a little bit more. So food manufacturers, whether it's in a box, a jar, a can, or it's in front of you at a restaurant, or you're bringing it home, or you're buying the food at a fast food restaurant, it doesn't matter. They make their food so it looks good, tastes good, the textures are there. Everything that you want to have a pleasant experience, they put into that product. And the other commercial that I'm reminded of quite often is an old, Fram oil filter. That's the one I was trying to think of. Pay me now or pay me later. And when you start looking at pay me now or pay me later, that's really and truly what toxins are all about. Some toxins are so bad that they're going to pay you right now. You're going to end up with an upset stomach, or with me, like the dry eye irritation, or they're going to pay you later, which means hospital bills 20 years from now. So if I look at the ingredients in Popeye's chicken, and there's over 100 of them, you wouldn't think, just breading, oil, and fry the chicken, but there's a lot in there. And since this particular program goes beyond just the video world, I'm going to read out the ones that I picked out that are, I think, of concern. Soybean oil, you got the mono and diglycerides, sodium isopyrophosphate, monosodium glutamate. Now, we've heard about that one quite a bit, a lot of Chinese food. potassium and sodium phosphates, enriched bleached wheat flour. And then you have the FD&C colors. In this particular case, for Popeyes, it's 5, 6, and the red number 4. So you get yellow 5, yellow 6, and red 3. Typically, we see a lot of red 40, but those are the ones. We have powdered cellulose. We have yeast extract, corn syrup solids, sodium aluminum silicate. That doesn't sound very good, does it? Methyl cellulose, another cellulose thing in there. Sodium aluminum phosphate. We have BHT, that's butyrated hydroxytoluene. Not a good one to have. You have dimethyl polysiloxane, calcium sodium EDTA. EDTA is an abbreviation for ethylene diamine tetracetic acid. We have modified palm oil. We have sodium benzoate. You have the liquid and hydrogenated form of soybean oil. You have palm kernel oil, soy lecithin, and there's several. And it's interesting how you can even have the same thing with different names, and they'll list it twice under a different name. But those are the things that we're going to look at. So if I'm going to pick out the first one, soybean oil. Now that's a vegetable oil. Vegetable oils are omega-6 oils. They're generally what we consider essential fatty acids because we don't make them. We have to actually get them into our bodies. But the problem with vegetable oils is the fact that if you have too many of them, they start to create an inflammatory effect in the body. And as such, a lot of vegetable oils are actually rancid because they're not protected the right way. They're not put in. There's a lot of things you can do to protect your vegetable oils, but a lot of times you buy them. There's a lot of olive oils that are not necessarily the highest quality, but they look like it. They got a really nice name on it. But for soybean oil, the Food and Drug Administration says they're GRAS, generally regarded as safe. They're not hazardous. But if we look at soybean oil and we look at the inflammatory effect in the body, we look at other things that are there. It's not the amount that's in that particular product at that time. If all I'm going to have is a wing and that's all I'm going to have, that's fine. If I'm going to have 6 legs and 2 thighs, that's a little bit different animal because now I'm eating beyond what is normally considered a meal. So I have to look at not only what is generally received as, generally regarded as safe, but if I increase my dosage of it, it's still safe. But more importantly, sometimes the generally regarded as safe is a consensus of opinion and not backed up by actual scientific testing. But in particular, soybean oil, okay, maybe we can live with it. But if you have a choice of not having it there, palm oil is really, red palm oil is a really good medium chain triglyceride, good oil. A lot of healthy, just like coconut, a lot of healthy heart issues associated with it. But soybean, again, if you have more than 4 times the amount of omega-6s to omega-3s in your diet, you will end up with inflammation over time. Low-level chronic inflammation at the cellular level can start the disease process. We have mono and diglycerides. Again, the FDA says GRAS, generally regarded as safe. But they contain trans fats. And this is a problem that it really and truly is a problem. You have enough of those, and we are looking at possibility, increased risk, cardiovascular issues, stroke. So yes, that one may be generally regarded as safe, but depending on how much you have, an issue. Sodium isopyrophosphate, SAPP. Again, the FDA says it's safe. It's a leavening agent. However, depending on how much you take in, you might end up having some mouth or irritation in your stomach, your intestinal tract. Not really a big deal if you're just having a normal amount. But what happens when SAPP is added to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other products that you're consuming today? What if the mono and diglycerides are added to your cosmetics? What if you're putting them on as part of a shampoo or an underarm deodorant or something else? It's not just what you're eating right now as a food additive. It's all those other places that some of these same chemicals show up, and they show up in a lot of places. Monosodium glutamate. A lot of people had almost instantaneous problems with it. You get flushing headaches, sweating, face tightness, numbness, burning, chest pain, all sorts of. It's a hazardous chemical. But again, if you look at it in the context of a food additive, they add such a little amount that they don't believe that it's going to cause a problem. But anybody who is susceptible and has, Chinese food or something that has that monosodium glutamate in it, they know immediately there's a problem. But monosodium glutamate makes things taste so good. It really does. So that's part of the reason they're putting in there. But you can't eat just one Lay's potato chip. That monosodium glutamate taste on the tongue, that glutamate is really and truly a good sensation. But we know that monosodium MSG is toxic, depending on the dosage you have, particularly for fetal development. Infants and youth, there's a lot of hypertension issues, can lead to obesity down the road, a lot of gastrointestinal issues. And since it's a glutamate and you have neurotoxins, this is a problem that can be a brain issue. Again, we have nervous system, reproductive, endocrine. There's a lot of things with monosodium glutamate, and they say, well, it's safe because we only add just a tiny amount. And it's, again, how safe is it? Well, we don't know. Okay, let's move on. Potassium and sodium phosphates. Well, FDA says, again, it's generally regarded as safe. But if you have a kidney disease or a kidney problem or a kidney infection, those phosphates can exacerbate the kidney problems that you have. And so one size doesn't fit all, because a lot of people are eating Popeye's chicken that have kidney problems, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. A lot of issues are out there. Now, did they test these particular food additives with people with chronic kidney disease? No. Did they test them with people with diabetes? No. They tested them with a normal human population. For those that they did test, there are some that they did not. So they're looking at historical deal. How many people eat the stuff and don't have a problem? That's kind of the way the scientific consensus of experts is arrived at. So if I've been selling 2 million pounds of Popeye's chicken around the world and I have 5 people that die from it, well, that's an acceptable, maybe acceptable. I don't know. There are lawyers out there that will tell you what is the acceptable level at different things that they may be responsible for. But with regard to this particular phosphates, if you have kidneys problems, stay away from it. Enriched bleached wheat flour, that sounds pretty safe. Well, what happens is for wheat flour, when you call it enriched and bleached, you remove the bran and the germ from the wheat. You're stripping almost all of the vitamins and minerals out of it. So we think we're getting something healthy. It's a whole grain, but in reality, we're only getting the shell. And what this does over time, you have enough of this flour, and this is a major problem, probably one of the causes of obesity, but we have metabolic syndrome. That involves your hypertension, cholesterol, your weight. There's a lot of things in that. In fact, very few, I can say maybe 10, 12% of Americans are what you would consider metabolically fit, healthy. There's a lot of issues out there that we have with the metabolisms. Obesity, talked about that a second ago. A lot of cardiovascular issues that erupt over time. But those wheat flour, if you're having it just as coming as unprocessed as possible, you have a certain amount of value there. When you start stripping everything off of it, no. Let's bounce on to the next one. Oh, one of my favorite subjects. The FD&C colors. Yellow number 3 is a synthetic dye. It's called tartrazine. The FDA says it doesn't present a threat at all, but they're saying it doesn't present a threat in the amount that they authorize for use as a food additive. However, it's never been fully investigated. This you look at the history on these things, and there are articles and studies going back and forth. Most people who think it's a problem believe it harms human cells over time. It's not something that just jumps out and bites you. But some authorities will actually recommend that yellow dye number 5 never be used in foods, but we'll use it in cosmetics without even thinking twice about it. So we take it out of one part of our environment, but we don't take it out of another. In Europe, if you're using yellow dye number 3, there has to be a warning on it. It says can cause allergies. There's other ones that have issues with causing hyperactivity in children. I think we'll talk about one of those down the road. But the British food standards ban yellow dye number 3. Yellow dye number 5 and 6 are still allowed. So there's about 9 major food dyes. They're all come from petroleum products, and I don't know why any one of them are being used. Let's talk about yellow dye number 6. Sunset yellow causes adrenal cancer in animals. This is disputed by the industry and FDA. But again, what levels of that yellow dye were they using in that laboratory animal, that rat, that rabbit, whatever it may happen to be, versus how many are you getting actually when you're eating a Popeye's thigh or drumstick? Well, they're saying, well, it's only a very tiny amount in the Popeyes, but in reality, sometimes those dyes, because of the way they're processed, they're petroleum products, they're contaminated with other things. Benzidine is one. It's a very definite carcinogen, and it is detected in some of these dyes when they're coming out of the factory. Some authorities consider that dye number 6, yellow dye number 6, is an unnecessary food risk. And by British standards, they have to put it on the label if it has yellow dye 6 linked to hyperactivity in children. And so you look at your M&Ms, you look at your brightly colored candies and everything else that's there. When you start talking about hyperactivity and somebody reads this thing and your kid's going wild, well, maybe they don't need to be eating M&Ms and other things that are brightly colored. But that's why these colors are added, because you have colors and you have color artificial colors and flavors. So you have something that smells terrific. You have something that looks extravagant. I mean, it just, why would I not want to eat that? And sometimes they put them on, you just spray them on the outside of things to make them look better. Red dye number 3, erythricin. International Association of Food Manufacturers claims there's no harm when used at the current levels. Okay. But the Center for Science and Public Interest, CSPI, in 2008 petitioned the FDA to ban all artificial food dyes because all of them had some level of behavioral problem in children. So, and 2 years later, the study came out and they found 9 artificial dyes that could likely cause cancer, behavioral problems, or hypersensitivity issues. And this has been around now 12 years, 13 years, and it hasn't happened. Now you go over and you look at Europe, you know, the British or the Japanese or the Australians, they have their own little regulations. And if they say no, I mean, we look at probably 1,300, if I think 1,100, 12, 13. There are chemicals that are allowed, considered safe by standards in the United States that Europe will not allow. They allow maybe 8 of them. So we talked about that, I think 2 sessions back. But there are different governmental agencies that say, yeah, this is safe for you if you only eat it in that amount. But what if you happen to have red dye number 3 in your lipstick, in your mascara, and on the raspberries or strawberries you eat because they spray it on there to make it have a much deeper color? What if it's in 2 or 3 other cereals that you eat? I mean, there's just so many places the red dye number 3 is found. It's ironic. As I mentioned earlier, the food dyes are made from petroleum products, oil, and they're contained in over 1,000 foods. The typical ones that make up 90% of all dyes used in the United States is red dye number 40, yellow 3, and yellow 6. They're not only used in the food industries, but they're always used in the cosmetic industries. Now, the FDA, when they're measuring how much of this red dye number 40 is in there, they're only measuring how much is free, not that amount that's actually bound to another molecule. So if I have my red dye and it's actually attached because molecularly they combined and formed something else, it's not picking up that new product. It's only picking up the stuff that's flowing in the bloodstream that is available for our bodies to absorb. The United Kingdom uses plant colors for their orange Fanta soda. They use pumpkin and carrot extracts. So if you're Fanta and you're manufacturing orange Fanta soda in the United Kingdom, Great Britain, you have to use plant colors. You cannot use any food dyes. However, in the United States, Fanta, for their orange Fanta soda, uses red dye number 40 and yellow dye number 6. Again, why? Because of the limitations of what the regulatory agencies will have. Now, the FDA does not test for developmental neurotoxicity. If we have something that's like monosodium glutamate, that goes right straight to the brain. It's not tested for some things. Now, why are they not doing that? Is it money? Is it time? I don't know. Now, the labels in the United Kingdom and the U.S. are different. that same label that has the yellow dye number 6 or the red dye number 40 is going to have a label on there saying hyperactivity in children, but the US label will not. But we do know that some places in the United States, they do offset that. Canada, not Canada, California for one, they will actually put on their labels potential carcinogen because they want their residents of California to know that this thing is probably a problem. Let's go with another one. We're kind of running out of time, and I got a lot of them to go through. So whatever we have left over, we'll just pick up next time and move right on. But powdered cellulose, again, FDA says generally regarded as safe. It acts as an insoluble fiber in our bodies. That sounds pretty good. I mean, you want soluble fiber, you want insoluble fiber. That insoluble fiber helps push everything through our intestines and keeps us clean. It minimizes diarrhea and constipation. But like anything else, too much of a good thing or too little of a good thing, we have problems. Mostly we get cellulose from raw fruits and vegetables, and they're good for us. And if we get too much, now we have issues because that fiber is sitting there in the stomach. It's not being processed, but it can cause bloating, upset stomach, gas, constipation, sometimes diarrhea. So if you're taking extra cellulose, then the medical field says, well, you probably ought to drink a little bit extra water, wash that thing on down. And it wouldn't hurt to exercise a little bit because now I'm getting my muscles to kind of help get the gut moving and get stuff flowing through the system. So, but that's not something, yes, we should drink extra water. Yes, we should exercise, but it shouldn't be to help the cellulose problem go away. And what little cellulose may affect me may affect another person totally different. And so we need to look at the big scheme of things. Sodium aluminum silicate. It almost sounds bad. You have sodium, you have aluminum, and you have silicon, 3 different metals. FDA says it's safe. It contains aluminum, which we've known for a long time has some kind of interconnection with the development of Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases. And that's why a lot of people have said in the past, if you're cooking with aluminum potware, don't do it. There's, again, depending on which side of the coin you're on, you can find a study that says, hey, this is really bad, or this is okay, nothing wrong with it. And so you have some authorities that do not consider aluminum as a food additive to be a health issue. Okay, if it's in low enough quantity, that's fine. Yet when you start testing some of these aluminum products on lab animals, they have problems, health problems. But you say, well, yeah, it was 5 times the amount that we used on the lab animal. But if I have 5 pieces of chicken, or I have something else in my daily food that has sodium aluminum silicate in it, does that mean I'm not getting the same level as that rat in the lab? I don't know. Sodium aluminum sulfate and phosphate. Okay, so now we have sodium again, aluminum again, but now we have, instead of the silicon, we have the sulfur and the phosphates. Phosphates have a problem. Aluminum has a problem. Phosphates have a problem. Anyway, there's a lot of issues there, but all of our exposure is how much we actually take into our body. So if we're just having that 1 piece of chicken and that's it and everything else fine, probably not a problem. Really and truly isn't. But again, where else are sodium, aluminum, sulfates, and phosphates found? In the food industry, there's over 1,000 products with food additives in it. In the cosmetic industry, lots and lots of exposure. Now, how do you know it's there? Read the label. If nothing else comes out of this talk today, pick up something and read the label. Now, does Popeye's chicken have a label on it that says all this? No, but if you go to the websites where you can find this information, you'll see, because they're required by law to define everything that goes into their products. And the Food Babe does a wonderful job highlighting which ones are good, which ones are bad, which ones are suspect. Take a good look at her. She has a blog there with a lot of good information on it. Okay, one of my other favorite chemicals, BHT, also BHA, but butylated hydroxytoluene. Again, FDA says, don't worry about it. It acts as a preservative. But if you go to the environmental working group that we talked about at the very beginning of today's show, we find out that BHT is a hormone disruptor. It has a problem with liver and lung inflammation, renal dysfunction, Again, laboratory animals are shown to come down with different cancers. Just in our own bodies, BHT will slow down the liver a little bit in processing alcohol. BHT is banned in Japan and the United Kingdom. And I think BHT is probably a good place to leave this. We're going to pick this up next time. I have a few more chemicals to go through. And then we're going to start looking at what other options do we have? If I want to have Popeye's chicken and I want it to taste like Popeye's chicken and maybe even look a little bit like Popeye's chicken, what options do I have? And we're going to talk about that next week, because we should have options if we don't want to eat the toxins and put them in our body on a regular basis. What can we do? So I'm going to leave it there. Again, Red Olaf. Let me take it down to the very end so I can do my final show here. Okay, get back here. Come on. Let's go. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. I can be found at redolaflin.com. That's REDOLAUGHLAN. Again, redolaflin.com. REDOLAUGHLAN.com. My information is on my website. Phone number, email, those are my two primary preferred methods of contact. I have a couple books that are available on my website and on Amazon. One's called Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging. It talks about the two primary causes of aging and what you can do to accelerate or decelerate the aging process. The other one, number one best-selling author on a best-selling book on Amazon, is The Joy of Ageless Health. It talks about the derivation of how does disease get generated in the body. We talk about the 6 or 7 different methods. What can you do about it? And that's those two good books. So I strongly recommend you take a look at those. And with that, we're just about 2 minutes over. So I'm going to conclude for the USA Global TV and Radio Network Talking Heads edition for today. And please show up next 2 weeks and we'll conclude this thing on toxins. And then we'll figure out where we're going from there. But I really and truly appreciate your time today, and we will catch you next week. Bye now.